I'm Denise Chaffin, and I am your host for Talking TA. And I have with me today Tom Whitty, the CRO for a company called Upflex.
Great to be here, Denise. Thank you.
Thank you. What are you most excited to learn or take away from this event, and how do you hope it will impact your work?
Great question. Well, this is our second year coming to Transform. First year was amazing. And one of the best takeaways was simply the interactions with all the folks and great minds coming together. And it's just a wonderful event. I think specifically this year, given everything in the zeitgeist, I think what I'm most curious about is how folks are thinking about AI applications in a way to not create efficiencies or reduce headcount, but instead to enable a better employee experience. And that's something we've been thinking quite a lot about at Upflex. So I'm very curious to hear other ideas and other ways that folks are going about intertwining these tools to really enrich the day-to-day experience that we have at work.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, in fact, one of the other questions here is as AI continues to evolve, or we're seeing advanced systems that can make decisions and take actions on their own, agentic AI. So, how do you see HR and talent acquisition teams adopting these technologies?
Great question. Yeah, it's interesting because the idea of AI has always been that it can, true AI can make decisions on its own. It evolves and it learns and then is able to apply that information to new decisions and evolve how it formulates those decisions. So it's interesting to see that now finally start to have the first cracks at coming about. I think from our perspective, what's that's going to mean? It's going to enable certainly agents to take on more tasks and more task execution as opposed to just giving information, which has largely been the use cases for it now, or producing content, things like that, or data analysis. Now it's going to be able to do those things, but actually act on it from what it's learning, which will be really interesting. From our perspective, the one way that we're really focused in on our work is how can we apply agents to optimize the in-office experience for our customers in making sure that the right people are brought in together at the right times based on actual collaboration patterns. So that's the biggest use case that we're seeing in our company and in the work we're doing with our customers. But I'm sure there's many more hundreds of ideas and use cases out there that we'll learn about at the event. We are doing a workshop.
Building the future of work,
Yes,
an interactive journey into flexible work strategies.
that's right.
Whoa, okay. How has the shift between remote work and RTO impacted productivity, collaboration, and company culture?
Great question. So, I mean, that's been when we came to Transform last year, we led a session and I gave a talk about this great tug of war that was emerging, right? Between employees pulling on one side, demanding flexibility,
Right.
CEOs pulling on the other side, demanding folks come back to offices. And a lot of companies just a year ago was only just sort of the beginning of that real big return to office push, which has certainly gained steam since Transform 2024.
Yeah.
What we have not really seen is any real measurable change to productivity or to outcomes. There's an expectation that there will be. That's not really what the data that we've seen, at least, has shown us. Sort of what was proven during COVID was that we can be just as productive. I think one of the downsides that we did see was around connection, and certainly folks that were spending more time at home by themselves in a more pure remote fashion,
Mhm.
they experienced isolation. Younger generations and new workers were experiencing a loss of mentorship and sponsorship
Mhm.
that was afforded to them by being in an office environment, having access to more senior folks more easily. So we saw those things decline. And I think that's largely why we've seen the proportion of companies over the last year that are purely remote start to decline. But hybrid has really emerged as the mainstay model.
Mhm.
The question is, of course, now how do we get hybrid right? How is it when we make sure, when we ask folks to come back in 50% of the time or 3 or 4 days a week, how can we make sure that when they do come in, they're getting value out of that experience and they're not coming in just to sit on Zoom meetings all day long, but
Yep.
when they get there, that not only is it the right environment, but again, it fuels the work that they have to do. And that goes back to the work that we're doing on developing technologies to ensure that in this fluid hybrid environment, that we get the right people together in the right places at the right times based on actual collaboration patterns, as opposed to the fixed methodologies that had largely guided that work in years past.
That's interesting. Well, you mentioned a while ago too that some people want to prefer to work at home, but then others or actually are more productive back in the office, like people who need that mentorship. So when you talk about hiring people at the same time, so those mentors and those people that need the training need to be in the office at the same time, right? So I'm just kind of curious, I mean, what technology is going to kind of map that collaboration, do you know? Is
That's a great question. For us, it's a combination of, as most things are, is human and tech. On the human side, the way we think about it is we have a team of advisors that are experts in organizational design and culture. And it's about really engineering those serendipitous moments, right? And that used to happen organically when you were just there all the time. But we can be very intentional. In fact, we've developed what we call our intentional connections playbook to say, okay, there are going to be certain days, there are going to be certain events that are geared towards those sponsorship type of interactions or mentorship type of interactions or new hire
Right.
type of events, as an example, or just cross functional collaboration type events. But you can engineer those moments to a degree. And then for us, where the technology side of it comes in is, okay, well, now most companies have reduced their office space, right? But they're bringing everyone back to the office, right? And we've seen some news about there's not enough space and people can't find parking spaces, things.
Yeah.
So now we can use technology, and this is one of the great, I think, applications of AI nowadays, is to make sure that now that we have a broad group of people that we're trying to bring back into the space, not all at the same time necessarily, but how can we look at different data from around the enterprise to understand who really is working with who and when and on what, and making sure that we're bringing those people together at the right times or to support those intentional connection moments that we're trying to engineer. And so that's part of our platform and what we're developing now.
That's amazing. Totally amazing. It's called Upflex.
That's right. Yeah.
So how long has Upflex been around?
Since 2017.
Okay, so you guys are coming up on 8 years,
Yep.
or you're at 8 years. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
That's awesome. What are you guys hoping to what kind of a takeaway are you hoping to send people away with?
I think the biggest, what I would love is for everyone that came, not only learn from each other and made some great connections themselves in this interactive session, but also maybe started to think differently about that these moments, these that magic of in person that we're trying to harness and bring back by asking folks to come back to the office. Those moments can happen anywhere.
Mhm.
They can happen in any building, not your specific building, right? So that's the first light bulb that we're hoping for. The second light bulb is that, like I was talking about a moment ago, that you can actually engineer and create those moments very intentionally
Yes.
through designing a program within the organization. And so if we start to think differently about that, I think that's going to really reshape some of the policy decisions that we're seeing around workforce planning and where folks work. And that will ultimately, our goal is to allow for this middle ground of flexibility and in person that, to the best of its ability, can satisfy those opposing forces.
That is amazing, seriously. So, anything else you wanna add? Anything we didn't talk about?
I mean, the only thing I could think of that just as thinking about it from a talent acquisition point of view is I think, although we're not in a war for talent at the moment, right? And the pendulum has swung back to a degree. Still, top talent is absolutely insistent on some modicum of flexibility,
Yes,
right?
true.
And if those are the folks that still do have that negotiating power
Yeah.
to an extent, right? And so it is still an imperative, I think, to create a flexible workplace, whether it's positioned as a benefit, whether it's positioned as we have thought differently in a more modern way about how we think about in person interaction that allows for more flexibility than our counterparts in our industry do. We're seeing that actually play out in real life in a couple industries right now, particularly in telecom. And so I think it's an interesting maybe viewpoint for folks that are in a talent acquisition role to think about some of these more modern strategies because it can really help them secure the best of the best.
Something just came to mind when you said that. So a lot of the people that are some of the key talent that want to work hybrid, some of them have to be relocated too. So then there's that push and pull.
Yeah.
Can I just come into the office like 1 week out of the month?
Yeah.
I'm getting a lot of that.
The rise of supercommuters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a big conversation right now as well. Because like I have a candidate right now, in fact, who's in Austin, Texas, and the position's going to be in Indiana.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh.
I mean, every role is a little bit different, right?
Yeah.
Some roles are more easily lend themselves to it. It also depends on, well, are the people I'm working with and interacting with, where are they, right?
Right.
The more distributed they are, right, the more it requires you to think differently and again, be more intentional about how you bring these folks together.
Right.
And so,
And how often?
yeah, how often, right? For what reasons? People, I think what I hear most commonly is people do have a hunger to spend time with one another, right? We're social creatures by naturally.
Yeah.
But what they don't want to feel like is they went through that time, energy, and effort and they didn't get anything in return for.
True.
No.
I think that's one of the things that's making these conferences so popular. Someone last year referred to the conferences as the new water coolers.
That's right.
You know, don't you love that?
Yes.
Because it kind of is.
Yeah.
Especially after COVID, everybody went so long without having any interaction with people and conferences weren't happening. But all of a sudden conferences started happening again and people said, hey, well, let's collectively all group together at these conferences so we can see vendors, customers, each other, all in one place.
That's right. Yeah.
So I think the conferences are back. Well, Tom, thank you so much. I appreciate you joining me.
Thank you so much, Denise. It was really a pleasure.
It was.
Thanks for having us.
Oh,